Hi there. My name's Bill Inman. I'd like to talk with you today about a topic that I think you'll find to be interesting. Corporations everywhere have call centers. They're typically 800 numbers that anybody can pick up the phone and have a conversation with the corporation. And an operator at the other end of the phone has the conversation. And this is a standard business practice. What's interesting is that the conversations that people have on these 800 numbers have very valuable information. And in most corporations, that information is not being used today, and that's a shame. So let's talk now about hearing the voice of your customer through call centers. So when you take a look at large corporations, it's a fairly standard thing for large corporations to have 800 numbers. 800 numbers in the United States. It may be something else in different parts of the world. And in these 800 numbers, anybody can pick up the phone and have a conversation with the company. And when you ask a corporation, do you know what's going on in your call center? The answer is, in most cases, people have no idea what's going on in their call center. They have no idea what's on their customer's mind. So when you ask an executive, do you know what's going on in your call center? This is what you typically get. We know all about our call center. We get 7,000 calls a day that last for 4.5 minutes on the average. Now, this is a useful and interesting piece of information, but it doesn't tell you what is going on in your call center. It doesn't tell you the content of the calls that are being found in your call center. So what is useful? What can you find out by listening to the calls in your call center? You can find out such things as, what are people complaining about? What do people want to buy? What about installation instructions? Where is their confusion? What about shipments? What about damage to the product? There's all sorts of issues and questions and concerns that customers and prospects have. This information is very important to the business. This is what's called the voice of the customer. This is what you should be getting out of your call center, but if you're like most corporations, you're probably not getting this out of your call center. So let's take a look at how this might be done for you. Let's take a look at a real call center. Over here on the right-hand side of this document, we have some transcripts that have come from people interacting with a corporation. This is a descriptive conversation. When you ask the company, what do you do with this information? This is what you typically get. It says, Bill, we get far too many phone calls in a day's time to actually sit down and read this information. And I say, wait a minute, this is really strange because this is very valuable information. And what are you doing with it today? You're throwing it away. It turns out that there is a pot of gold. There is tremendous value that's hidden in these conversations. So let's talk about how you can go about finding out what these conversations have to say. There is technology called Textual ETL. Textual ETL is able to read text, take that text, put it into a database, and then once in the database, you can then sit and process to your heart's content. And the value in putting it into a database and enlisting the aid of the computer is the fact that you are able to handle and look at literally millions of calls. The computer doesn't get tired and worn out like people get bored and tired and worn out. So with Textual ETL, you can now start to read what's going on in your call center. Pardon me. Read what's going on in your call center and make sense of this information. So let's take a look at a dashboard that represents what's going on in your call center. The nice thing about the dashboard is it's visual and you can put it in front of management. The second nice thing about the dashboard is the fact that it's something that can be put in a concise format. You can put it in one page, and in one page in front of a manager, it can tell a tremendous story and tell the manager what is going on in your call center. As an example, on the left top hand side over here, we see the general demeanor of the call that's being discussed and analyzed. Are people complaining? Do people want to buy something? Do people need instructions for installation? What is it? So the general demeanor of the call is found on the top left-hand side over here, and that by itself is very useful information. Now, on the bottom right-hand side is another form of very useful information. On the bottom right-hand side, we have the hour-by-hour analysis of the calls. And you can see, if you look carefully, that at 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning, there's not much activity in the call center. However, at 9 o'clock and 10 o'clock in the morning and 3 o'clock in the afternoon, there's a lot of activity. And so you can now understand when you're getting activity in your call center. In the same vein, you can look at it on a daily basis, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And it's kind of interesting, if you look at this example, you see that not much activity has occurred on a Tuesday. That's because the Tuesday was a national holiday. And so this is a second way of looking at the activity that has occurred in your call center. A third way of looking at the activity is on a monthly basis. And you can see that there is a pattern to people calling in. For whatever reason, we don't get many call center phone calls in the first of the month, but when we get to the last of the month is when we get to the phone calls. But perhaps the most important information in our call center analysis is that is in the middle. This is what are people talking about. And this is a ranking of all of the subjects that people are discussing when they are talking in their call center. Now, in this case, the big black box is called STB. That's shorthand for setup box, which happens to be one of the things that the customer that we're talking with here happens to provide. But there are other activities, and you can find out the subjects that are on people's mind. So you see then that when you look at this dashboard in a single page with visualization, with the text arranged properly, you can describe to management what is going on in your call center. Another thing you can do is drill down processing. In drill down processing, you can hover over any of these areas and go into the detail of what's going on. So when somebody says, we don't know what's going on in our call center, it just means they haven't really tried, because if you really tried, this is the kind of information that you could be using and finding in your corporation. And when you look at the relationship between the raw text on the left and the dashboard on the right, it's no contest. The before is information that's not useful at all, and the after information on the right-hand side is very useful information. And how did we get to here? We got here by using technology called Textual ETL. Now, you may be surprised to know that Textual ETL is inexpensive, fast, and easy to use. It's not something that costs millions and millions of dollars. It's not something that is going to bankrupt your company. It's a way to get your information into the hands of the executive in an inexpensive, fast, easy fashion. So now you can know what your customers are saying. you can use your call center to find out the information that's locked up in there. If you'd like to hear more conversations about this, we'd be happy to talk with you. We do this kind of work all the time, and we are more than happy to share with you what can be done, how it can be done. I think you'll be very surprised and happy that you had a conversation. You can contact us either through email or through the phone number. And I think you'll find it to be a very worthwhile conversation. Thank you for your time today. I hope you found this presentation to be interesting and useful.